Alright, Zorga Fantome is here as a mad scientist, so let's begin. Here's the starter, the Fantôme version of Dream Crawling, meaning we're getting a remake of Zorga's original ride line, in which we go to the grade 1 waking power, the new ranker chain, the Fantôme version. So the skill is auto when riding on top of the grade 0, reveal a grade 3 Zorga from your ride deck, put a regrained bio creation research lab token into your order zone, and yes, it's a token set order, and once again it's a grade 1 that just sets you up, and most bracket ones give you a token for set order. In which we go to the research lab itself, which has a continuous ability where you cannot ride any other grade 3s besides Zorga, but the main skill is act order zone, rest this card, and then call a demonic beast alchemist body uber mesh token to your rear guard. And yes, this could be used on your very first grade 1 ride as well, in which we go to the alchemist body token itself, which has 0 power, and of course being a token, it doesn't go to the main deck, but does have the skill where count rear guard during your turn. This card gives us 5k power for each grade of your Vanguard. Essentially, it could be an early game attack or a booster depending on the turn, especially since you can use your set order token to call this on your first grade 1 turn and use it as a booster if needed, or once it hits grade 2 turn, it will be 10k power that could attack into your opponent's Vanguard and just be 15k if you're at grade 3. But it also has more skills like the next one where auto rigor once per turn. When this card is performed with alchemists, aka through Zorga skills, which will be explained later, stand this unit, and if this card was in the back row, move it to the front row in the same column, essentially giving you an extra attack for the deck. And just think of this as a trick start for the deck. And also has one last skill which is mandatory, where count rear guard during the end of the turn, you must retire this unit. This is so you don't get a permanent +1 per turn, especially since this idea where it's an experimental monster coming out that doesn't always stay stable, and of course goes back to the laboratory. But essentially just think of this as a trick start for a deck. And then we go to the Fantôme Black Tears Husk Dragon, which is of course a grade 2 with 10k power, and the skill is when rolled upon by at least a grade 3 Zorga, energy blast 3 to look at top 7 cards of your deck and choose up to 2 cards. One of them goes to hand and the other one goes to drop zone. But if you choose not to put in the drop zone, search your deck for 1 Crimson Moon card and put it to the drop zone instead. Of course, shuffle your deck, which is a typical grade 2 that just sets you up. Not only that, adds your card to your hand and technically can set up your drop zone, or just choose to set up for your Fantôme skill instead. And oh boy, since this is Zorga we're talking about, it retains its original roots of calling a bunch of stuff from the drop zone, especially with the drop zone heavy skills. And now to the grade 3 with 13k power, Summon a Taboo Zorga Fantome, which has a skill of Auto Vanguard. When this card attacks, cost Counterblast 1, choose any number of Genomes gel rear guards with different names, and if you chose at least 2, choose your Alchemist body rear guard and perform Alchemist with them. And then if you have a Crimson Moon bound card, this and that unit gets plus 5k power, but if you have at least 3, 10k instead. So what Alchemist is basically putting a bunch of rear guards that are Genome below your token, in a similar way of basically crossover dressing. I already love this type of skill because instead of using magic, aka orders, you're using creatures, aka units. Mad scientist Zorga combining to make one perfect creation basically. With the second skill of being the Fantôme skill, cost bind a Crimson Moon card from hand, soul, or drop, and then for every Crimson Moon card in the bind zone, you call a Genome gel from the drop zone, which this skill will be relevant considering that you're going to be alchemixing and those cards are going to go back to the drop zone at the end of the turn the minute your token gets retired. But essentially it's basically like original Zorga combining with a bit of Archetype. Mad scientist Zorga create more Genomes to experiment on and thus trying to create a perfect monster. Although once again, everything's all rearguard reliant as everything depends on what you alchemix with. So it depends on what type of Genomes they make in the future. But definitely a lot of potential for this deck, unless if they decide to forget about it. And now we go to the Genomes, starting off with Creation Demonic Beast by Engraver, which is a grade 1 waking power and skills. Act drop if you have an Alchemist token on rearguard and you don't have a copy of itself on rearguard, cost energy plus 3 to call this to rearguard, and plus 5k power in the end turn, which is very helpful because you really need all the recovery options that you can get for this deck. With the second skill word auto, when this card is used for alchemists, choose 1 alchemist token and that unit gets plus 10k power in the end turn. So it's a typical power up card for extra bonuses, but mainly use it for the recovery option because you do need the recovery options just so you could actually use your alchemists. And then to Creation Demonic Beast Shadow Eater Hunting Dog, which is grade 1 wicked power, and the skill is auto when placed on rearguard from hand, and you have a research lab in the order zone, cost Soul Blast 1, search your whole entire deck for 1 card that is a normal unit that is not Sentinel and put it to the drop zone, and of course shuffle your deck. A search throughout the whole deck is always very powerful, especially for a deck that could literally recover from the drop zone. But the second skill is that when you perform Alchemist with this card, you draw a card, and then additionally you can cost Counterblast 1 to draw another card. This is must run since not only that it gives you a decent bonus by letting you draw more cards, but also sets you up for your drop zone, which you're going to recover anyway. And then we go to the last creation demonic beast, Cardinal Ring, which is grade 2 with second power, and the skill is auto drop. If you have an Alchemix token on rearguard and you do not have a copy of itself on rearguard, you may call this on rearguard and you call by this ability while you have at least a grade 3 Vanguard Zorga plus 5 key power. Once again, more early game superior call. With the second skill, Auto, if you perform Alchemix with this card, choose a Alchemix body, and then the one card that got Alchemix with this card gets 1 crit into the end turn. So once again, it's another free call card along with giving you extra bonus for your Alchemix. Obviously, must run this. And then here's the Brank Gate discard fodder for Fantôme units, either Soul Blast 1 or Energy Blast 3 to search for a Crimson Moon when discarded during the ride phase for the ride deck, or when put on Guardian, you can either Counter Blast 1 or Energy Blast 2 to draw a card, of course play it depending on the deck. And then we go to Regrind Security Grudge Breaking, which is a grade 1 with give power on the skill is Count Guardian. If your order zone has the Research Lab, shield plus 5k, but if your bind zone has a Crimson Moon card, plus 10k instead. You're not going to run this because you don't have space for it. And now we go to the workers, starting off with Regrain Researcher Vortex Prober, which is a grade 2 with taking power on the skill is Act Hand. If your order zone doesn't have a copy of this card and you do not put a card to the order zone this turn, you can put this to the order zone to draw a card. Basically, the researcher's going into work to help out Zorga, because that's basically what it is. Go to the laboratory and then just do some stuff. Which the second skill is to assist Zorga with Act Order Zone. If you have at least a grade 3 Vanguard Zorga and you do not bind a copy of itself this turn, bind this card, choose any number of rearguards up to the same number of Crimson Moon cards in the bind zone, and they get plus 5 key power in the end turn. Pretty nice card. All the researchers are going to have this filter-like ability where you put it to the order zone to draw a card, which you could even use it in the early game, and then basically assist Zorga with some bonuses, in this case powering up your board. Kinda too bad that the first skill is kinda locked for you to not put anything to the order zone during the turn, because you have 3 of these. But I guess it's just to avoid to add up too much skills. In which we go to Regrain Researchers Heldrina, which is a grade 1 with K power, and the skill is first skill is exactly the same. If you have a research lab and you did not put a card to the order zone this turn while you don't have a copy of it, put this to the order zone and draw a card. With the second skill, where it's a rearguard skill, auto rearguard, when this card boosts at least a grade 3 Vanguard Zorga plus 5 key power in a battle, and then you can Soul Blast 1, look at top 3 cards of your deck, choose up to 1 card from them, and put it to the drop, and also plus 2k power as well. Basically 15k booster for the Zorga deck. That also gets you an extra card to the drop zone, which is very helpful. And then the third skill is where the order zone part happens, because Act Order Zone once per turn. If you have at least a grade 3 Vanguard Zorga and your bind zone has at least 2 Crimson Moon cards, discard a card from your hand, and your Vanguard gets a triple drive ability until the end turn. Kinda crazy that you can actually do this every single turn, since this one doesn't even bind itself. But yes, another nice new addition for Zorga to get some bonuses. And now finally to our last card, Regrain Researchers Flesh and Bone Tearing, which is a grade 1 with key power, and the skill is Act Hand. If you do not have a copy of it in the order zone, which is your research lab, and you did not put a card to the order zone this turn, put this card to your hand into your order zone and then draw a card. And just like the other researchers, it has the skill so you could activate the order zone ability where Act Order Zone once per turn. If your Vanguard is Zorga, retire 1 or 2 rearguards, draw a card, and if you retired at least 2, countercharge 1. You have quite a lot of free superior calling in this deck, so having ways to countercharge is always pretty nice. In which we go to the next skill, where Auto Drop. When you perform Alchemix and you do not have a copy of this card on rearguard, call this to rearguard in the back row circle. And then at the end of the turn, retire this unit. Basically, when you perform Alchemix, your Alchemix token is going to move to the front row, thus giving you another attack, and then this could be called behind it so you get a booster with it. So overall, a pretty decent card, and up to you on how many you want to run. And finally, here's the secret rare, and next Dokovan we got the Magnolia Phantom Ride line, which is kind of surprising that they decided to reveal in Dokovan instead on Tuesday. And so that's it for the new Zorga Phantom ride line along with its support. What do you guys think of it? A lot of cards than I expected for Zorga Phantom, but pretty good deck overall and pretty interesting. Especially with the idea where Zorga was a crazy necromancer turned into a mad scientist and thus no longer undead, creating monsters of monstrosities. But overall, there's really not much to say about the deck because everything really revolves around its support. So I really do hope that they actually do not forget about this deck after this season's over. But on that, that's it for this, and see you all next time.